We had some preliminary information that radars were turned on. We do not know the nature of the radars. We do not, until we debrief the pilots, it is really not appropriate to get into that kind of detail.
Dawn is broken over the Mediterranean on another day of tension between the United States and Libya. The world waits more details from the American pilots who shot down 2 Libyan jet fighters. Good evening to you. Welcome to NewsNight on CNN. I'm Patrick Emory.
And I'm Donna Kelley. A Pentagon briefing Thursday morning might answer some questions lingering from the latest encounter between the United States and Libya. The United States says shooting down the 2 Libyan planes over the Mediterranean was self-defense. Libya says the MiGs were not armed and calls the incident a deliberate act of American aggression. The American pilots were debriefed in Italy. Some of their story will be disclosed on Thursday. CNN's Carl Rochelle has the latest on what's known right now.
The Pentagon says the carrier John F. Kennedy was conducting normal operation, practicing takeoffs and landings about 127 miles north of Tobruk, Libya, in international waters, when the 2 Libyan MiG-23 floggers headed for the carrier battle group. 2 F-14s flying combat air patrol were dispatched to intercept the Libyans. They met about 70 miles north of the northeast Libyan coast.
The F-14 pilots maneuvered to avoid the closing aircraft. They changed speed, altitude, and direction. The Libyan aircraft continued to close in a hostile manner. At about 14 miles, the U.S. section leader decided his aircraft was in jeopardy, and they could wait no longer. 1 MiG-23 was shot down with a Sparrow missile. The second MiG was shot down by a Sidewinder missile.
The Pentagon says 2 parachutes were seen. There were no U.S. casualties. Carlucci was asked how the U.S. pilots decided the Libyan planes were a threat.
If you're coming directly at an aircraft, accelerating in speed, and when the aircraft maneuvers to get out of your way, you reposition yourself so that you are basically in a firing position, then the hostile intent is clear.
Carlucci says the Kennedy and its F-14s were operating under normal peacetime rules of engagement and that there was no heightened state of alert.
Anytime an aircraft demonstrates clear hostile intent, and on the basis of our preliminary information, this is certainly the case here, our aircraft are entitled under the rules of engagement to defend themselves.
Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi called the U.S. action terrorism and vowed to meet challenge with challenge. Intelligence sources say the Libyans have been increasingly tense as the U.S. has accused them of readying a chemical weapons plant outside Tripoli. U.S. officials said the downing of the Libyan planes had nothing to do with the plant.
We now consider this matter closed.
President Reagan was informed of the shoot-down about an hour after it occurred. President-elect Bush was notified as well. The incident is the 3rd head-on collision between the U.S. and Libya since 1981, when 2 Libyan fighters were shot down after they challenged U.S. Navy planes. Carl Rochelle, CNN, the Pentagon.
That Pentagon briefing on the confrontation with Libya will be carried live on CNN Thursday morning, starting at 10:30. That's Eastern Time.
Colonel Gaddafi says if America has prevailed in the air and at sea, it will be defeated on land. In his words, we, as well as the fish, are awaiting them. Libyan TV reports anti-American protests continued into the night on Wednesday. Italian TV says Gaddafi has beefed up security around his already heavily fortified residence in Tripoli. And the official Yugoslav news agency reports many people fled the city after the incident. Libya's UN representative says not even America's friends can justify the attack.
I think this action of the United States against a country, not only the Arabs, I think the whole international community will condemn it. And we know that no, even your allies are not with you.
Mudsir has asked for an emergency United Nations Security Council meeting to condemn what he calls U.S. aggression. Thursday morning, the Security Council will hold closed informal meetings to consider the request. UN Secretary General Perez de Cuellar issued a statement on Wednesday calling on both the U.S. and Libya to exercise restraint.
The State Department says it's notified all U.S. embassies of the skirmish with Libya. The department said it's up to each diplomatic post to decide on taking action to guard against terrorism. U.S. officials also tried to turn attention to an international conference starting this weekend on chemical weapons. CNN's Ralph Begleiter has our report.
Within hours of the incident in the Mediterranean, U.S. officials were downplaying its significance, declaring the case closed, offering no indication the Libyan fighters had been warned before being knocked out of the sky, sounding almost apologetic.
These kind of incidents are always regrettable, no doubt about that. This incident happened. It's over, as far as we're concerned.
The U.S. does not want military action against Libya to sidetrack discussion at a conference in Paris this weekend about curbing the use of chemical weapons. For more than a year, Libya has been building a chemical factory due south of Tripoli at the edge of the Libyan desert, on a site heavily fortified with anti-aircraft missiles and other defenses. Secretary of State Schultz hopes to use the Libyan example to spur other nations to disavow chemical weapons and to stop supplying experts, chemicals, and equipment which might be used to create chemical weapons like those which have already been used during the Iran-Iraq war. The U.S. believes the Libyan factory could be used to give an unstable Muammar Gaddafi the power of chemical warfare.
Chemical weapons can be developed cheaply, and they are attractive to certain states as a weapon of mass destruction, a weapon of terror.
In recent days, U.S. intelligence sources say some of the chemicals which might be used to make weapons have been moved away from the Libyan factory to remote desert storage sites. Officials believe Gaddafi is nervous about a possible U.S. attack against the chemical plant, partly because American intelligence overflights have increased recently. But officials say the U.S. has no interest in picking a fight with Gaddafi now, and the dogfight in the Mediterranean had no connection to U.S. concerns about the chemical plant. Even so, Gaddafi has good reason for nervousness since the American bombing of Tripoli in 1986, after a spate of terrorist bombings the U.S. pinned on Libya. At the time, Secretary of State Schultz crowed about putting Gaddafi back in his box and sending a message to the Libyan leader.
The message is, you've had it, pal. You are isolated. You are recognized as a terrorist. And as far as terrorists are concerned, more and more the message is no place to hide.
The U.S. imposed strict sanctions against Libya, and some American allies followed suit. Following Gaddafi's embarrassing defeat in a military move against neighboring Chad, Gaddafi has been increasingly seen as on the run. But the latest Mediterranean incident demonstrates the Libyan leader can still make trouble for the United States. As one official puts it, Gaddafi can tweak us and kick us, and most of the time he can get away with it. Ralph Begleiter, CNN at the State Department.
Our report tonight says President Reagan does not favor a military attack on the alleged chemical weapons plant in Libya. The Thursday Washington Post quotes a senior administration official. He said the president believes the military attack would set off an international uproar that would harm U.S. interests. The Post also quotes Secretary of State George Shultz as saying U.S. concern results from the potential for terrorist use of poison gas. Schultz said the administration deliberately wants to make Libya feel uncomfortable about having what he called a hot potato on its hands. Again, the Reagan administration says it considers the skirmish with Libya to be closed, but Libya is pressing ahead on the diplomatic front, taking the matter to the United Nations. We'd like to know where you stand on the incident. In our NewsNight 900 poll, we ask, was the United States justified in shooting down the two Libyan jets? Call 1-900-720-6110 if you think, yes, the United States was acting properly in downing the Libyan planes. Call 1-900-720-6111 if you believe, no, the United States action was not justified. Remember, the call will cost you 50 cents, and we'll, of course, report our poll results near the end of NewsNight.
And still to come on NewsNight from Capitol Hill, a strong show of support for the downing of the two Libyan aircraft.
And just how will the incident affect the upcoming international conference on chemical weapons? A report just ahead.
This may sound strange, but if I hadn't had a heart attack, I wouldn't be here today. I am doing fine, and I learned something you ought to know. There's a whole lot of proof that a diet low in saturated fats and cholesterol can help keep your heart healthy. Fleischmann's has 0 cholesterol, 0, zip, none. I changed after my heart attack. What are you waiting for?
Fleischmann's. It does your heart good.
This coupon is good for Danny Crawford. This coupon is good for Ron Shirazi. All these coupons are good. Good because they help Special Olympics. In your Publishers Clearinghouse mail, you'll find 30 coupons valued at over $9.50. For each one you redeem, Procter & Gamble will donate 10 cents to Special Olympics, up to $750,000. And that's good for Gary Johnson. Look for Procter & Gamble coupons. They're good for Special Olympics and you.
Right now, my head is throbbing. It feels like there are fire engines driving back and forth, smashing into the ends of my head, and the sirens are blaring.
Karen, I'd like you to try Tylenol gel caps. For pain like yours, nothing works better.
I don't have a headache anymore. I mean, I feel great. Nothing in the front, nothing between here and this part. It's great.
New extra-strength Tylenol gel caps. In the real world of everyday pain, nothing works better.
Haven't there been times when you've wanted to take the law into your own hands? We'll talk about that tomorrow on Sonia Live, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on CNN.
Whether you're raking it in or just trying to make it grow, watch CNN's Moneyline at 7 Eastern. Moneyline, featuring the nation's premier business news team. Moneyline, a safe bet when you're serious about your money.
Members of Congress quickly gave support to the Navy action in shooting down the Libyan planes. Senators and House members received briefings from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The lawmakers said that they accepted the administration account of things, but some also warned of escalating trouble with Libya. CNN's Pam Olson with more tonight.
Congressional support for downing the 2 Libyan MiGs was immediate.
We did exactly what we should have done.
I think it's clear that the American pilots, from what we know now, were trying to disengage, and it's clear the Libyan pilots were in pursuit.
But many senators were quick to wave the flag of caution as to what happens next. Republican Senator John McCain says the incident shouldn't be used as a go-ahead for an attack on the chemical weapons plant in Libya.
It is a heavily defended installation, as we know, and I think before we embark on any enterprise of this nature, which could be both escalatory and endanger American servicemen's lives, we should exercise every single option. And I don't know that we have done that.
The former chairman of the House Select Intelligence Committee says it's important not to link a decision on what to do about the chemical facility to the shoot-down.
I don't think we want to tip our hand in any way about what we might want to do in that chemical plant.
Another lawmaker says diplomacy should be first given a chance to work.
The Libyans claim that they are not going to produce chemical weapons. They say that they would welcome inspection. I think we should take them at their word, but we should insist that in addition to inspection, there should be on-site monitoring.
Hines says the Libyans might have challenged the U.S. fighters because they were nervous about a possible attack on the chemical warfare plant. But one senator warned that Muammar Gaddafi's belligerence could lead to more incidents.
I don't think we were there to egg him on. I think we're always showing the flag in those parts of the world where we have concerns, quite obviously. But under the rules of the freedom of the seas, we have a right to do that. We will continue to do that.
Lawmakers are adamant that Western allies be pressured to discontinue any technical assistance to Libya. And they are also clear Libya's hostile actions shouldn't be used as an excuse to wipe out that chemical weapons plant, at least until all other options have been exhausted. Pam Olson, CNN, Capitol Hill.
World reaction to the downing of the 2 Libyan jets has been cautious for the most part. Most U.S. allies in Europe are neither supporting nor condemning the incident, and the Soviet Union has issued no immediate comments. Israel applauds the move, saying it has no reason to doubt the American explanation of what happened. But PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat is deeply worried about the ramifications. When CNN's John Sweeney broke the news to Arafat in Cairo Wednesday morning, the Arab leader did not mince words.
As you probably know, the United States today shot down 2 Libyan jet fighters over the Mediterranean. I wonder how you react to that and what you think.
I didn't hear it before.
It happened
just now?
Yeah.
Today?
Yes.
At what time? At what time?
Maybe a couple of hours ago.
Oh.
And I was wondering how you...
It is a very serious matter.
How will that affect...
The Arab League had a similar reaction on Wednesday. The group demanded that the United States stop so-called acts of provocation near the Libyan coast.
Great Britain accepts the U.S. claim of self-defense in Wednesday's incident, and the British government adds to that support by saying it backs American charges that Libya is building a chemical weapons plant near Tripoli. Britain says it has independent information to prove the plant is intended to produce chemical weapons. Washington has rejected Libya's offer for an inspection of the site, and the U.S. has not ruled out launching an attack on the facility. U.S. officials say the downing of 2 jets has no link to the allegations of a chemical weapons plant, but Wednesday's development may jeopardize this weekend's conference on chemical weapons. Secretary of State George Shultz is among the dignitaries expected to attend that session. CNN's Jeannie Mose examines what the foreign ministers will try to accomplish while in Paris.
Delegations from 140 nations will meet in a beautiful city to discuss some ugly weapons. The conference on chemical weapons is aimed at creating moral momentum rather than concrete results.
And it certainly gives publicity to the issue and gives political support to the courts.
A cause that's been around since the First World War. The carnage of chemical weapons back then led to the Geneva Protocol of 1925. 113 nations signed the document banning the use of such weapons, but the Geneva Protocol didn't go far enough, which is one reason French President Francois Mitterrand pushed for an international conference when he addressed the UN General Assembly 3 months ago.
We must prohibit not only the use of chemical weapons, but also the manufacture of them.
Banning the manufacture is something negotiators in Geneva have been working on since the 60s. In 1984, then Vice President George Bush offered the American draft of a treaty. And since Mikhail Gorbachev took over in the Soviet Union, there has been substantial progress toward reaching agreement.
Indications are that they might achieve this objective by the end of this year.
It's hoped the Chemical Weapons Conference in Paris will give a boost to the Geneva negotiations. Some diplomats suggest it's no coincidence that the U.S. made an issue out of an alleged Libyan chemical weapons plant right before the Paris conference. Libya's deputy UN ambassador, Ali Montasser, says the U.S. is picking on his country.
I was asking why Libya? There are 20 countries in the world who have real Libya refuted to have chemical weapons, but the United States, they know many other countries. The United States, one of the biggest producers.
At the Paris conference, the U.S. says it will propose giving the UN Secretary General greater powers to investigate allegations of chemical weapons use. But there's not much the Secretary General can do if countries accused refuse to cooperate, as Iraq has. Jeannie Mose, CNN, New York.
A little later this hour, Mideast expert Frank Fukuyama joins us. He's with the RAND Corporation, and we'll get his thoughts on the latest U.S.-Libyan showdown and whether it will cloud the upcoming chemical weapons conference in Paris.
And a Scottish town mourns for the victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
Checking channels? Check CNN to find out what in the world is going on. CNN, stay informed.
How will you live in the next century? Suddenly, life will be more comfortable, smoother, and quicker. Introducing the new 1989 Buick Century with premium features you expect from the best-selling Buick on the American road. All at a price that will let you enter the next century very comfortably.
The great American road belongs to Buick.
How does the Players Club card work? Like magic. In Las Vegas, Atlantic City, the Caribbean, Reno, Lake Tahoe, even on cruise ships. Just show your Players Club card and save on rooms. Show the card and save on shows. And save on food. And how about 2 free room nights in Las Vegas or Atlantic City when you use our Super Saver airfare for the most exciting times of your life called Players Club? Now.
Every day, millions of Americans take the same vitamins. But what good is taking vitamins if you're taking the wrong ones? Introducing Your Life brand Daily Vitamin Packs. You can see the difference. Special lifestyles deserve special formulas. That's why each pack is a total system of different vitamins and minerals. Your Life brand daily vitamin packs. Above average vitamins for above average lives.
Here's something everyone worries about when flying, whether their carry-on luggage will fit.
Could you put this in the overhead compartment? How about under the seat?
So at Samsonite, we've designed carry-ons you truly can carry on, like our garment bag and suitcase in one, packed with features that make things easier to pack. At Samsonite, we'll never leave you holding the bag, proving once again that our strengths are legendary.
Federal charges have been dropped against 11 men accused of trying to sell U.S. weapons worth $2 billion to Iran. The former defendants include a retired Israeli general and an American lawyer based in London. The indictments resulted from a sting operation by U.S. agents and Iranian arms dealer Cyrus Hashimi. But the United States said it cannot try the case because Hashimi died 2.5 years ago. He was to be the prosecution's chief witness. Iran-Contra prosecutor Lawrence Walsh won a legal victory from a federal appeals court in Washington on Wednesday. The court rejected Oliver North's request that Walsh not be allowed to see a summary of classified testimony that North might use in his defense. The ruling may help Walsh and U.S. intelligence officials to determine whether North might expose U.S. defense secrets at his trial, which begins January 31st.
The people of Lockerbie, Scotland mourned the loss of friends and the deaths of strangers Wednesday, victims of the blast that sent a flaming jet crashing onto their quiet town. The town's red sandstone church was packed with residents and more than 100 relatives of people killed when the terrorism struck Pan Am Flight 103. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and the U.S. ambassador to Britain were among the mourners. They listened as the head of the Church of Scotland warned against demands for revenge.
We might be tempted, even urged by some, to flex our muscles in response and show that we are men. I, for one, would have none of it, and I hope you will not either. Justice, yes. Retaliation, no.
The December 21st bombing that killed all 259 people aboard the plane and 11 on the ground in Lockerbie. Funeral services for the local victims begin on Thursday.
President-elect George Bush had a once-in-a-century chance to savor his election victory on Wednesday. He presided over a joint session of Congress called to certify the election results. It is the vice president's responsibility to preside over such a session.
Declares the joint session dissolved.
This was the first time since Martin Van Buren did so in 1837 that a vice president had the opportunity to name himself the next president. George Bush will become president on January 20th. That is Inauguration Day. CNN has confirmed that Defense Secretary Frank Carlucci will come out in favor of closing military bases across the country. Sources say Carlucci has approved the recommendation of a special commission to close 34 military installations and 52 military housing complexes. Carlucci's decision sets the stage for debate on Capitol Hill. He is expected to announce the decision at a news conference Thursday at noon Eastern. CNN will cover it live. Still ahead, Friends of the Reagans host a star-studded Hollywood party for the First Lady's anti-drug crusade.
And some endangered animals have found a safe haven in a very unlikely setting.
Haven't there been times when you've wanted to take the law into your own hands? We'll talk about that tomorrow on Sonia Live, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on CNN.
One of travel's greatest challenges is how to keep wrinkles out of clothes packed in luggage you've checked. But now, thanks to Samsonite's hard-side luggage, it's easy because our special features keep your clothes in place and you looking great. Samsonite hard-side luggage has put the suit back in the suitcase, so you'll never make the wrong kind of impression. Proving once again that our strengths are legendary.
The New Yorker. It's been called the best magazine in the world, probably the best magazine that ever was. See if you agree. Call this number and get 52 weekly issues of the New Yorker for just $25.95. That's $65 off the cover price. Week after week, the quality of the New Yorker speaks for itself.
So call 1-800-257-1257 for 52 weekly issues of the best magazine in the world. Yes, the New Yorker.
The exploration of life in space and the preservation of life on Earth mesh at a wildlife sanctuary in Florida. CNN's John Zarella takes us on a tour.
In the distance, a flock of rare white pelicans huddle on a sandy knoll. An osprey, back from an afternoon fishing trip, carries its lunch in its talons.
This is literally an island in a sea of urban development.
The island is the Kennedy Space Center, 140,000 acres, including 40 miles of unspoiled beachfront. Besides being the home of America's space program, it is also a national wildlife preserve, home for more than 300 species of birds and 30 mammals.
This is a sanctuary, and hopefully it's going to be a sanctuary on into the next century.
To the north is Titusville. To the south is Cocoa Beach. More than a quarter century ago, when NASA took over, setting this space aside for space exploration, the decision was made to keep the land in as much of its natural state as possible.
Everything we do, we very carefully look at what impact we have on the environment.
Working with the National Wildlife Service, which is charged with guarding the animal's interests, NASA has gone beyond simply caretaking. Using transmitters and satellite tracking, NASA is helping wildlife scientists study the migratory habits of the endangered manatee.
They move a lot more than what we had thought they would. They may make as many as 5 trips back and forth to Georgia in a course of the summertime.
These pictures are also the result of NASA ingenuity. The space agency took a camera from the launch pad, modified it, and put it in a tree above an eagle's nest in order to study the birds.
The whole nesting sequence of the bald eagles from the time they come back and start repairing the nest through incubation and raising their young.
Eagles, like other birds, keep coming back year after year. About 5,000 alligators are quite at home in the shallow marshes. A complex water management plan makes this a welcome sanctuary. Wildlife officials are constantly raising and lowering water levels and changing salinity in various parts of the preserve to fit the different animals' needs. Except for the occasional blast of rocket engines, space and nature get along just fine here. In fact, if it weren't for space, this place for nature probably wouldn't exist. John Zarella, CNN, at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Science and Technology Today is brought to you by the people at AT&T. AT&T, the right choice. For more science news, watch CNN Saturday and Sunday for Science and Technology Week.
If I sold you something that wasn't truly what you needed, you'd find me out, you wouldn't trust me, and you'd never do business with me again. That's absolutely counter to the kind of relationship I want to have with you. Our goal is to not just sell you one thing and leave and never come back again. Our goal is that we have an ongoing relationship, that you buy from us today and in the future, and it isn't a one-shot deal. And that, I think, is how people throughout the company feel.
Last night in our NewsNight 900 poll, we asked, should President Reagan be compelled to testify at the North trial? A majority of our callers, 61%, said yes, and there's still time to get your vote in for tonight's poll. And the question, was the U.S. justified in shooting down the 2 Libyan jets?
How would you like to have a fresh start in '89? Hi, I'm Bob Hall. For the first 5 days of January, we'll pay off all your credit cards, period. Let me repeat that. Sunfair will pay off all your credit cards up to $1,500 if you purchase any brand new Chevy truck, even an Isuzu Trooper 2 or pickup. What a fresh way to start the year and have all your credit cards paid off. This offer is only till Saturday night, so let's get together now at your exclusive gold medal dealer, Sunfair.
Discover how Cook Advertising Network can help promote your business. With affordable rates and targeted programming, Cook is your most important customer connection. Now you can reach your target market with ESPN, CNN, USA, and MTV. The Cook Advertising Network. It's effective. It's affordable. It's targeted. It works. Discover your most important customer connection. Discover the Cook Advertising Network. In Yakima, call 248-1235.
This is CNN.
Welcome back to Newsnight. Karen McGinnis will be along shortly with a look at the nation's weather for us.
First, here's a recap of our top story. Britain and Israel so far are the only allies supporting the U.S. downing of 2 Libyan jet fighters. The confrontation happened over the Mediterranean on Wednesday in international waters, 70 miles north of the Libyan coast. 2 F-14s from the aircraft carrier John F. Kennedy intercepted 2 Libyan MiGs headed toward a U.S. battle group. The Pentagon claims the pilots acted in self-defense. Defense Secretary Carlucci denies charges by Libya that the U.S. Mediterranean maneuvers are a prelude to an attack.
These 6 fleet ships and aircraft were operating in international waters and international airspace at the time of the incident and posed no threat to Libya. And these routine operations are of the same type that have been conducted in the same area many times in the past.
Libyan TV reports anti-American demonstrations erupted after the incident and continued well into the night. Colonel Gaddafi calls U.S. action official American terrorism backed by brute force, and he vows Libya will meet challenge with challenge.
Well, there are a couple of storms to talk about in the weather.
And Karen McGinnis is just the one to talk about them.
As a matter of fact, we have a couple of storms to tell you about. One right around the Four Corners region, another one now affecting the Pacific Northwest. For the viewers in the west, watch out the next couple of days. It's going to be rather stormy. Then high pressure is going to move over your area in time for the weekend, and you'll see some cool weather conditions, but at least you'll be dry for the time being until this next weather system slides down. Here's what's happening. The storm is developing at this hour right around the Four Corners region. Already Flagstaff, more than 6 inches of snow from this latest weather system. That makes it more than 10 inches of snow on the ground. It's raining in places right around northern New Mexico, also through Arizona. And snow for the High Sierra, well, you could see a foot or 2 feet. Across the southern mountains of Arizona, well, it looks like the snow level there right around 7,000 or 6,000 feet. And once this weather system really becomes better organized, it looks like the snow level will be 4,000 or 5,000 feet. But right along the border between Oregon and California, 500 feet, maybe 1,000 feet. You're looking at the possibility of snow there. Generally speaking, between 4 and 6 inches possible, plenty in the higher elevations, and that's great news for skiers. Let's talk about what's happening in the forecast map as we take a look at Thursday afternoon. We're going to watch this weather system, the school front and its accompanying weather system, produce a few widely scattered showers. Now, for Chicago, it looked like early in the evening you could see the rain and the snow. It still may be that way. There's still lots of cold air there. But for the most part, we think it will be rain. But a lot of areas right around the Ohio Valley, Mississippi River Valley, you're looking at a combination of precipitation, not necessarily Thursday afternoon, but maybe Thursday night and perhaps Friday morning. There's a weather system. As a matter of fact, the two of these are going to join forces. This weather system is going to race towards the northeast. So if you're watching us from the Central Plains or from the Great Lakes towards the end of the week, you get that stormy mix of precipitation. And tonight, right around the northeast, let's talk about the radar picture. Tonight, the wind chill factors right around Brunswick, Maine, where everybody in Maine is below zero. The wind chill factor there is just about 58 degrees below zero. That means if you go outside, your skin will freeze just like that. Also, here's the way it looks like across the southwest, rather stormy. As a matter of fact, some of the snow has tapered off throughout the southern mountains of Colorado at this hour. Let's take a look at Thursday's forecast highs as we look at a seagull on Holliver Pier in Miami. Looks like the bird had a pretty nice day coming up Thursday in Miami. It's going to be partly cloudy and mild, high of about 70 degrees, something that he's used to. Friday, look for even warmer weather. The high temperature right around 78 degrees coming up. Donna?
Delightful. Thank you, Karen. Well, Hollywood held an early welcome home party for President and Mrs. Ronald Reagan tonight. The setting was the Beverly Hilton Hotel. The occasion was a fundraiser for a drug treatment center for teenagers. The center will be named after First Lady Nancy Reagan. It will be established in a former hospital in the San Fernando Valley. Guests, such as television star Gary Coleman, believe the facility will help teens who are addicted.
I think another center of a real high caliber is good for people to have a choice to go and, you know, get rid of their problem or to help them with their problem. And because Nancy is so interested in such a caring person, having worked on the show and talked about the drug problem, I think it's a very good idea.
Tonight's dinner raised $1 million for the Nancy Reagan Drug Treatment Center. When we come back, our guest Frank Fukuyama joins us. He's a MIDI specialist and staff member at the RAND Corporation, and we'll be talking about the U.S.-Libyan air fight in the Mediterranean.
And later on in NewsNight, the nominees are announced for the annual Golden Globe Awards, and we'll see which films and stars led the pack.
Hi, I'm Bob Vila. You may have seen my home improvement program on TV. I dropped by to see how my friend John here is doing. Since he bought this house, he's wanted to make improvements. The kitchen's a great place to start because it's where you can add real beauty, convenience, and value. You know, there's nothing as satisfying as doing a job right the first time. And here's something that'll really help. It's the Home Repair and Improvement series from Time Life Books. It sure helped John. He's already installed modern countertops, put in a stainless sink, and single control faucet and sprayer. He's added the backsplash. Now he's caulking. Beautiful. Perfect job. This first book, Kitchens and Bathrooms, will guide you step by step to impressive improvements like this. See here on page 44, it tells you all you need to know to make and install a backsplash. And up in the bathroom, Kitchens and Bathrooms has lots of ideas for you. Look at this great tiling and grouting job. Nice work, John. Thanks, Bob. I'm really pleased. John doesn't want to have to do this job again soon, so he's following a tip here on page 27. He's protecting grout from dirt and mildew by applying a sealant using a small brush. Tips like that and proven professional techniques are why Time Life Books are so unique. With easy-to-follow directions and drawings, it's like having a pro working along with you. Your home is your biggest single investment. These books will help you improve and protect it. Call now for your first book, Kitchens and Bathrooms, for a free 15-day examination. You'll receive this 12-foot tape measure free with your purchase. Then about every other month, you'll receive another idea-packed volume, such as new living spaces, adding on, and weatherproofing. Keep only those you want. Cancel anytime. Home Repair and Improvement from Time Life Books. It's like having a pro working right along with you.
To examine kitchens and bathrooms for 15 days, just call 1-800-354-1300. Keep it and pay just $10.99 plus shipping and handling. With your purchase, you'll receive the Stanley Tape Measure as a free gift. So call 1-800-354-1300. That's 1-800-354-1300.
Checking channels? Check CNN to find out what in the world is going on. CNN. Stay informed.
The international implications of Wednesday's developments in the Mediterranean are now a source of growing tension. Well, here to discuss those implications with us is Frank Fukuyama, who joins us in our Los Angeles bureau. Mr. Fukuyama is a senior staff member of the RAND Corporation. That's a group which studies international security. In his position, Mr. Fukuyama follows both Middle East and Soviet politics. He was a member of the State Department's policy planning staff in 1981 and in 1982. That was the period when the U.S. shot down Libyan fighters over the Gulf of Sidra. And Mr. Fukuyama, we want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm wondering, the first thing that we might talk about here is all of the concern on this chemical plant, or alleged chemical plant, that Colonel Gaddafi is building. You find this just a coincidence, or indeed, as the Secretary of Defense has said, this is just a normal training exercise and the Libyans sent these fighters out?
Well, it does seem from the reports that have come out thus far that, in fact, Carlucci was probably correct. You know, in 1986, I think when we went after the Libyans, we sought to deliberately provoke them, and our fleet was very close to the Libyan coast south of the so-called line of death, and I think that we were virtually asking Gaddafi to provoke us and start some kind of an incident.
Let's turn this around then. Do you think that Gaddafi was attempting to provoke the United States?
It's very hard to say what his intention was. It seems to me that they are very worried at the moment about a possible repeat of the '86 bombing attack, and they certainly want reconnaissance planes in the area, and it could have been a matter of simply trigger-happy pilots.
Concerning the chemical plant, does this incident then indeed focus some heat on the colonel, draw a lot of attention to the chemical plant, and therefore make it more difficult for him to proceed with it?
Well, I think that part of the show of force was aimed at Colonel Gaddafi, and I think it will probably have the effect that you mentioned. I think really, though, the other half of putting the fleet in the Mediterranean is really focused on this international conference that's going to convene in Paris on Saturday, and I think that one of the aims of the administration is to, in some way, jolt or scare the Europeans and the Japanese, who are the main purveyors of the technology that produces chemical weapons, and to try to get them to be a bit more responsible in their export policies.
This whole matter is somewhat three-pronged then, isn't it? Because we've got that conference coming up in Paris. We have the chemical plant, or Colonel Gaddafi refers to it as a pharmaceutical plant, under construction, and then we have the Sixth Fleet involved. That's quite a set of circumstances, isn't it?
That's right, but I think that the incident should really have a salutary effect really on everybody. In 1986, as you may recall, when we bombed Libya, the Europeans were extremely upset about this. Almost everybody, with the exception of Mrs. Thatcher, condemned the U.S. action as a kind of Rambo Reagan administration gone out of control. But in the end, what they did was to get much tougher on the kinds of routine police measures to crack down on terrorists that were transiting through their territory. And I think that this kind of incident coming right before this conference may have a similar sort of effect on the Europeans in getting them to take their responsibilities in controlling the proliferation of these technologies a little bit more seriously.
Well, you're recognized as an expert on this part of the world, and in your studies, what would you suggest Colonel Gaddafi, what is his aim? He could just deal with his own nation of Libya and not bother a lot of people. What does he want? Why is he building a chemical plant? Why does he do some of the things that he apparently does?
Well, you know, if you consider what Libya is, it's a country with less than 3 million people. It was a desert oasis that hardly anyone paid attention to until they found oil in that region. And even after they found oil, nobody paid attention to it until Colonel Gaddafi started supporting political causes and terrorism and provoking various sorts of international incidents in order to cause attention to himself. And he's done a very good job, I'd say, at that. And if you consider for a man of his, given the kind of country and the material he's got to work with, he's done a pretty good job for himself.
Dr. Fukuyama, President Reagan says that he is thinking that it will cause such an uproar if we do attack Libya or the chemical plant. Do you think that there are other options that the United States has if we prove that the chemical plant is in operation?
Well, I think that it will really be incumbent on either this administration or the next administration to make absolutely clear to everybody that it has pursued every other alternative, every other diplomatic alternative in trying to get this thing shut down. But my impression is that the force has already left, and we'll be closing the barn door on an empty barn at this point in terms of sanctions or greater export controls on the part of the suppliers. And I would say that if that's really the case, then you probably don't have very many diplomatic alternatives to deal with this problem.
Our correspondent John Sweeney apparently broke the news to Yasser Arafat about the downing of the Libyan planes, and he said that that would bode very badly for the Middle East peace process. Perhaps your reaction to that, what effect this might have?
I think it's going to have very little impact. I think that all Arab leaders in a situation like this feel compelled to show unity for the Arab cause. But in fact, Arafat and almost every other Arab leader has some grudge or, problem with Gaddafi. And I think that, behind the scenes, they're probably all quite happy that Gaddafi is getting his nose bloodied again, or is in a position to do that. And I think that Arafat is in the same boat as far as that's concerned. He doesn't really owe Colonel Gaddafi anything.
Well, talking about Gaddafi, perhaps your reaction, and if you think this will show him in a better light, or if people will see that the the chemical plant, with Britain now saying that they have independent confirmation of the chemical plant that they will see that he's up to no good.
Well, I think that will be the effect. You've got to stamp your feet and make people sit up and take notice of what's going on. And I think that for all of the negative reaction that occurred after the 1986 bombing, that's precisely what people did with regard to more conventional forms of terrorism.
All right, Dr. Frank Fukuyama, thanks very much for joining us. Back in a minute.
Oatmeal for breakfast gets a little boring. Wake it up with the crunchy, nutty taste of Grape Nut cereal. Grape nuts and oatmeal. Pick them up, then mix them up, stir them up, and cook them up. Rev up the texture, turn up the flavor. Oomph up your oatmeal with Post Grape Nut cereal.
In 3 words or less, tell us why you prefer thrifty car rental.
You don't have to be wealthy or well-known to rent any of Thrifty's new Chrysler cars. Thrifty is...
May I remind the affiliates we may run a little over tonight.
Enjoy the luxury of a Chrysler New Yorker, just $34.95 a day at Thrifty. 72-hour advance reservation required.
Have you ever noticed how some people can't come out and say thrifty price for everyone? Have you ever noticed that? Call 1-800 for cars.
Have you ever wondered what a baggage handler might take on vacation? What everyone should take. Samsonite's Glutton for Punishment. Get Samsonite's Glutton for Punishment, because no one knows what goes on behind closed doors.
Haven't there been times when you've wanted to take the law into your own hands? We'll talk about that tomorrow on Sonia Live, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on CNN.
A study by the Boston University School of Medicine finds that some women taking the pill have twice the risk of breast cancer compared with women who never use oral contraceptives. The researchers stress that their study does not close the book on an old question: can the pill cause cancer? In Washington, a consumer group says new labeling is needed to warn women on the pill about the risk of breast cancer. Both groups are expected to be heard Thursday at a Food and Drug Administration hearing.
As advances in medicine make it easier to deliver a healthy baby, the risk of malpractice suits may be scaring some of the best doctors away from the delivery room. CNN medical correspondent Dan Rutz takes a look at this uncertain future in obstetrics.
How's your daughter doing?
This is the doctor-patient relationship in action. Dr. David Bryan favored obstetrics as a specialty because he could really get to know the patients and their families.
There is nothing that is as thrilling to me as delivering a baby, and as the baby takes its first breaths and begins to cry, which is a typical response, without spanking this child.
The fond memories are 4 years old. That's when Dr. Bryan and his partner shortened their shingle to gynecology only. To the suburban Atlanta specialist, the fear of being unfairly sued over unavoidable birth defects and complications gradually replaced the good feeling that had been a part of nurturing new life.
Human reproduction is not perfect. We haven't made this point to pregnant women because in a sense we think that it's an added stress to them, but 3 to 4% of all babies are born with significant birth defects.
Across town, Dr. John Ramsey, chief of obstetrics at Atlanta's Piedmont Hospital, agrees. Doctors sometimes allow their patients' expectations to become unreasonable.
And I think that some of the things that we say and do tend to lead them to believe that, you know, we are better than we are. We tend to be reassuring. Everybody likes to reassure. Nobody likes to bear bad news.
Over 2,000 deliveries and no lawsuits later, Dr. Ramsey does stress communication with patients, even when it is unpleasant.
And there are just some people that are able to communicate better than others. I have a lot of good friends that are excellent doctors, but they don't talk enough. A patient likes to hear you express what you think about her case, or what you think about her. She may not like what you say, but at least there's some give and take.
The visits leading up to delivery give ample time to talk out the issues patients take interest in these days. The use of anesthesia, episiotomy, that is, a surgical cut to prevent tearing, electronic fetal monitors, soft music, and subdued lights. But at some point, this veteran practitioner draws the line on what he calls blatant consumerism. Over the contentions of a magazine author or zealous childbirth instructor, he holds the doctor must be trusted to make some of the decisions for the safety of both mother and child.
And as I talk to younger people that are giving up obstetrics, that probably is one of the major issues, that they're not the only person managing the case. There are too many directors, there are too many other cooks out there stirring the soup.
Just quitting obstetrics cost Dr. Bryan over $100,000 for insurance against liability claims that could arise any time while the babies he delivered are growing up. The doctors who still deliver babies speak of defensive medicine. More on that in our next report. Dan Rutz, CNN reporting.
Why do you take aspirin more than once a week?
Because after one day of tennis, I can have 3 days of aches and pains. But when you take aspirin that often, you wonder about aspirin stomach upset.
Well, today, there's a better aspirin product for you. Try Buffered Bufferin. Better than plain aspirin because it's 100% aspirin, plus 3 buffers to help protect against stomach upset aspirin can cause.
You know, it really is better.
Try Buffered Bufferin if you take aspirin more than once a week.
The UN Security Council meets Thursday morning to hear Libya's complaints of the U.S. downing of 2 Libyan jets. Now, Libya says that it'll ask the UN to condemn the U.S., but the United States says it considers the matter closed.
In our NewsNight's 900 poll, we asked, was the United States justified in shooting down the 2 Libyan jets? 84% of our callers said yes, the United States Navy did act correctly in downing the Libyan planes. 16% said no, the action was not justified. Remember, the NewsNight 900 poll is not scientific, but it gives us a reflection of the opinions of the folks who choose to give us a call.
About 35 minutes, Dave Walker comes along with NewsNight Update.
Dave?
Thank you, Donna Patrick. We will deviate from the normal NewsNight Update format as we feature expanded coverage of Wednesday's events in the Mediterranean, the downing of 2 Libyan fighters by 2 Navy F-14s. We will look at the official U.S. position, the reaction of Muammar Gaddafi, and a history of conflict between the two nations. In addition, we will be taking comments from viewers. If you wish to participate, you should call now. Tell us what you wish to say, and we'll call you back during NewsNight Update as time permits. If you wish to participate, you should call now. NewsNight Update coming up at 1:30 Eastern. Join us. Donna, Patrick.
Thank you, Dave. Well, the Golden Globe Awards are presented annually by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Nominations for the awards were announced on Wednesday. CNN's Sandy Kenyon says 1 television show and 1 film received most of the attention.
With foreign flair, the members of the Hollywood Foreign Press Corps announced their Golden Globe nominations, and a working girl had the most, a total of 6.
Well, there's a first time for everything.
This group splits films into dramas and comedies or musicals. Working Girl is competing in that category against Big, A Fish Called Wanda, Midnight Run, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
How can I ever repay you?
Gorillas in the Mist could win the trophy as Best Motion Picture Drama, but so could The Accidental Tourist, A Cry in the Dark, Rain Man, Running on Empty, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, or Mississippi Burning. That film's star, Gene Hackman, was recognized, along with
Dustin Hoffman, Rain Man, Tom Hulce, Dominic and Eugene, Edward James Almost Stand and Deliver, Forrest Whitaker, Bird.
Christine Lottie is up for an award for Running on Empty, up against Meryl Streep for A Cry in the Dark. Jodie Foster in The Accused, Shirley MacLaine as Madame Suzatska, and Sigourney Weaver as the late Diane Fossey. Oscar traditionally ignores comedic performances, but here Jamie Lee Curtis could get her due, or Melanie Griffith, or Amy Irving. but they'll have to beat Michelle Pfeiffer and Susan Sarandon.
Kind of my own spring training.
The field among the men in the comedy category includes Tom Hanks, Michael Caine, John Cleese, Bob Hoskins, and Robert De Niro. Fewer than 100 journalists choose the winners of this award, but in the past, the Golden Globe ceremony has proved to be a pretty accurate forecast of the winners at the more prestigious Academy Awards. Sadie Kenyon, CNN, Beverly Hills, California.
Well, that'll do it for this edition of Newsnight. I'm Donna Kelley. Thanks for joining us.
I'm Patrick Emory. Have a good evening. The news continues.